Welcome back to Stylex Studio, and this is class number 11 in the Photoshop for Beginners series. And in this class we will be focusing on the pen tool. So without further ado, let's get straight into Photoshop. Okay, let's open up our Photoshop. As you can see, I have a background with the white canvas. Now first and foremost, let's find out exactly where the pen tool is located. So to the left side of your workspace, you have your tools, and I have a double column tool, and on the left column, if you look at an icon that looks like the head of a pen and you hover your mouse over it, you should see the tooltip which states pen tool and the letter P in brackets. Now that letter P in bracket is all it is. It's a shortcut key to come into the pen tool. Okay, for example, if I was in my move tool and I press the letter P on my keyboard, it will take me directly into my pen tool. Okay, just like with any other tool, the pen tool also brings its own set of options, okay, at the top. We will look at these in a short while. Okay, before we proceed further with the pen tool, I'd like to clear a few things in your heads. Okay, now remember, anything that you do with the pen tool is a vector. Okay, we have rasters and we have vectors. The difference between the two is vectors are based on mathematical and geometrical calculations. Okay, so anything you create, an object or a path or a selection that is done with a pen tool will be a vector, and vectors are calculated through mathematical calculations and geometrical calculations. Okay, now the other side of it would be a raster. Now rasters are based on pixels, small tiny squares with different colors and tones combined together to create an image. Okay, let's focus on the pen tool. Okay, the pen tool here, say for example, if you right click, it will give you some more options. Now these options are obviously the pen tool itself, a freeform pen tool, curvature pen tool, add anchor point, delete anchor point, and convert point. Okay, now we will look at these throughout this tutorial. Okay, so right at the top we have the modes. Within the pen tool you have two modes, the shape and the path. In this tutorial we won't focus on the path, we will focus on the shape. Okay, so make sure your shape is highlighted or active. The next point is fill. Fill is a color that will, when you create an object or a shape, what color will it actually be. Okay, but we will look at these as we go along. Let's slowly move down to the pen tool itself. Make sure your pen tool is highlighted, left click on that. Okay, how to create a shape. Move the cursor to the point that you'd like to start your first point and then left click down. Okay, as you see, as soon as I left click down and release my left click, it will generate a layer, a shape layer for me. Okay, now these points are known as anchor points within Photoshop. Very, very important point. Okay, and if I was to come across here and create another point, this would be my anchor point number 2, and let's create another anchor point. Okay, anchor point number 3, and let's say for example if my anchor point number 4 was here, and then I'd move back to my anchor point number 1 to close the shape off. Now I've created a shape or an object. Okay, now if you look carefully up here, I chose the color blue or bluish. Okay, that's what it filled the shape or the object with. Okay, now we're going to slowly focus on these few points here. Okay, the next option is stroke. Currently I have no stroke. If you would like to have a stroke on your object, pick a color from your swatches here. If you don't have a color here, you can always go onto your color picker. So for example, your color was not in these colors, so you wanted to pick another color. You can click here and your color picker option would appear on your screen, and then you can pick a color of your desire, of your choice. Okay, So for example, we go for red. Okay, let's pick red. As you see, as I picked the red, it gave me a red line, a border known as a stroke. Okay, so let me just zoom in slightly so we get a better understanding of what a stroke is. Okay, now that we've picked a color for the stroke, we can also pick the size of the stroke. If we do a click down here, it will give us a slider. So left side will reduce the size of the stroke, and as you move the slider to the right side, it will increase the size of the stroke. Okay, quite easy to understand. You can either use a slider or you can put your numbers in manually. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to put in 9 pixels, and that's my stroke of 9 pixels. Okay, now the option next to the size would be the type of stroke: solid line, box line, or a dotted line as your stroke. So hopefully you've actually understood the fill, the stroke, size of the stroke, and the type of the stroke. Okay, the fill is exactly the same as the stroke. This icon here, which is a / with a white background, a red / on a white background, that's basically no fill. Okay, and then you can obviously pick your colors that you desire for your fill, or you can open up your color picker and then choose a color of your likings. Okay, so let's for example say this color here, and it will pick that color. That's one way of filling. Another way would be double clicking on the layer itself, and it will give you a color picker, and then we can change the color from here. So for example, we like this color now, and we'll go with this. Okay, very easy to use. Now these were straight lines that we've just discussed. How do we create curves within shapes? Okay, make sure your pen tool is selected, left click down, and you've created a first anchor point. Go to your second point, left click down, but this time do not release your left click. While having the left click down, drag your mouse in a direction away from the anchor point, and it will give you a few handles, 2 handles. So for example, I like this curve. I would release my left click, and it's given me this curve, but it's also given me 2 handles. Handle number 1 from this anchor point, and handle number 2 from the same anchor point. The purpose of these handles: the first handle determines the curve of this line, which means the curve from point 2 to point 1. So this handle will determine this curve. The second handle will determine the line that will come from point 2 to point 3. Okay, so anchor point 2 to anchor point 3, wherever we decide to put that anchor point. We can change these angles or curves by adjusting these handles. So if we go to the end of both handles, you'll see like a point. If I take my mouse to the point, hold the Alt key down on my keyboard, left click down, the cursor will change, as you'll see, and then I can individually move that handle to the curve that I desire, shall we say. Okay, so let's go here. This is the angle and the curve I like, or I prefer. I would release the left click and the Alt key. Okay, same goes for handle number 2. If you would like to change the direction of the next curve, you can do so. For example, if I wanted to create a point here, but I would like a straight line, I would not wish to have a curve, then I could very easily go to the point, Alt and left click down, and move this handle in the direction of my next anchor point. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I will leave it where it was, here. Now you see this handle is going in this direction, and if I mark an anchor point, say for example here, what this will do is drag the line in this direction first before bending towards my anchor point. Okay, so let's do an example run. So I'll do my anchor point here, left click down, and as you see, it went along that direction where the handle was, and then it curved and bent towards the next anchor point, which was anchor point number 3. Okay, so hopefully you understand how these lines work. Now if I wanted to change this curve, very simply I could bring my mouse on top of that point at the end of that second handle, Alt down and left click down, and I could move my handle in a direction and the curve that I require. For example, I wanted at this curvature, I could release, left click, release the Alt, and as you can see, it's given me the curve that I require. Okay, let's delete that and start over again. Let's create a point here. Let's change the color of the fill this time to, say, this color here. And let's create a second point here. Left click down, this time drag here. Say for example I wanted to get rid of this direction handle. Now all I would need to do is take my mouse on top of the anchor point, Alt left click, and that handle now has disappeared. Okay, now this should give me, instead of a curve, it'll give me a straight line to my next anchor point. It will not give me a curve anymore. So for example, if I was to do here, it will give me a straight line from this point to this point. So let's do my third point here. Left click down and drag your mouse away from the anchor point. Say for example to that here. Release. Okay. Go back to your anchor point because I do not require this handle now. So Alt and left click. And to finish off the shape, let's go back to my original anchor point number 1. Click on it once and let's create a shape for me. Let me just increase the size of this. So now we have 1, 2, 3. 3 anchor points. Now say for example you wanted to add more anchor points to this shape. Very easily done by going to anywhere apart from where these 3 anchor points are. So on your path here, so from anchor point 1 to anchor point 2, all this space in between is the path. Anywhere, as soon as you go onto the path line, the plus symbol appears on your cursor. As soon as you see that plus symbol, you're free to actually add an anchor point at that spot just by left clicking down. Now that adds an anchor point. And say for example if you wanted to add one here, I've got the plus symbol, left click down. Okay, so for example I wanted to add one up on this point here, I've got the plus symbol, left click down. Now how to remove anchor points. For example, I don't need this anchor point here. As I move my cursor on top of that anchor point, the subtract or the minus symbol will appear just below your cursor. As soon as you see that minus symbol, left click down, it will remove that anchor point. And once again, I don't need this anchor point, it will remove that anchor point. Once again, I don't need this anchor point, it will remove that anchor point. Okay, so that's how to add and delete anchor points. Okay, now the next bit is that we want to cover very quickly is how to actually reposition an anchor point. For example, we've created this anchor point, but I'd like this anchor point to be up here somewhere. I'd like to reposition this. Okay, very simply, go on top of the anchor point, control and left click down. Once you control and left click down, just drag that anchor point to your desired position, or relocate that anchor point to your desired position, and release the left click and control, sorry, and you will reposition that anchor point. This was, let's say for example, we add another anchor point here, and we'd like to reposition this anchor point. So I take my cursor on top of that anchor point, control, left click down, having them held down, drag your mouse to a position that you desire. For example here, release the left click and control, and you've repositioned and relocated your anchor point. Okay, hopefully that concept of moving anchor points is clear in your heads as well. A very simple tool to use, but very effective. Now the next question is, once we've created our object in the form of a shape, how do we make it into a selection? Make sure you hover your mouse on top of the object, right click, it will give you make selection. Click on it, it will give you another pop-up box. It will ask you about the feather radius, anti-alias, and operation new selection. All depends on your feather, how much feather you'd like to give. I want to keep mine at 0. I want to keep anti-alias checked, and it's a new selection. Once I click OK, it will make a selection. Hopefully that concept of how to make a selection is quite clear in your heads. There are other ways, but we will cover those ways in further tutorials down the line. Okay, because this is a basic tutorial. I just want you guys to get used to how to make selections the easy way at the moment. Okay, so hopefully you understood the concept of how to use the pen tool, how to add anchor points, how to delete anchor points, how to reposition anchor points, and how to make selections from the shape that you created. Okay, we will end this class here, but remember to go away and do your practice runs, because you know practice makes perfect. Okay, as always, don't forget to subscribe, like and share the channel, and remember to hit the bell icon. Until the next time, take care of yourselves. Adios amigos.